Hey,
Hey,
Dr.
hey. How are you, Coach Val?
I am doing good. How are you, Dr.
Doing good. It's another Tuesday. I'm glad we are back together again to join each other for another wonderful discussion about all things education.
And there are so many things to discuss about education these days. Um, for example, our show last week. So this show is self accountability for students, part two. And so last week when we did part one, let me just recap for you all who, I don't know, whatever reason, it's okay, you weren't able to catch it. Make sure you go back and catch it on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and on YouTube. Okay, there's the plugs. So in the session last week, in our talk last week, we started our talk on student self accountability. I gave a couple of examples of experiences that I had with my students. Go catch the replay. But basically, our kids are blaming instead of holding themselves accountable. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. We found some articles. One in particular talked about this 50%. A kid can't get more than a 50, I mean, less than a 50 on a graded assignment, some schools even 60. How does that help students hold themselves accountable? Not really. In the long run, it kind of hinders them, it handicaps them from what to expect in the real world, right? So, to the point where students are also now realizing it. We have young adults who are floundering in their adult life in the world because they realize they don't have the tools that they need. And so, in our part two today, we are actually going to talk about some of those tools or some of the strategies that we can use to help hold our students accountable.
And I love that you brought up that 50% rule from the last episode. I had never heard of such a horrible thing. In my opinion, it's a horrible thing because you are giving grades of 50 to kids who aren't even turning in the assignment. So they're no longer getting zeros. They're getting 50, even if they don't do anything. And we talked last time about like what it is like for a parent. It makes me lose confidence in the grades that I'm seeing on my kids' assignments or in whatever portal your district uses for your grading system. It makes me lose confidence. I'm going to start to question it. And I also shared last time about how my own son's progress report has some, you know, numbers on there that I was like, say what? No, 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 no. I know this kid. That ain't where he's at in that subject. And if you think that's where he's at, then please, this is your time to share because what I'm seeing, I don't agree at all. And it's okay to have a respectful disagreement with a teacher and give them the chance to show. And in that conversation, the teacher really couldn't demonstrate or show me what she used to get herself to think that my child was at this particular level for his progress report in
Mm.
that subject area. So that put her on notice that I'm not the one you can just get over on and just circle numbers on a progress report. It's like a Likert scale, so like 1 to 5, 5 being proficient, 1 being just hasn't even been introduced yet. So I'm not the one. So I don't want you to try it on anybody else, but at minimum, don't try it on me because
Not
I'm
today,
already
not tomorrow,
here.
right?
Yeah, no, 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 no. But that takes you knowing your child and you stepping up to have that conversation with the teacher as well. But when the grades are being padded like this 50% rule, and you mentioned even at your school, you couldn't give grade lower than a 60, right?
Yeah, and then on top of that, like the completion grades or the participation grades that are also calculated that's as representing what the kid knows. Like, yeah, you have to watch.
Yeah. And so it's a shame that we have to do it that way, but also that's just the way that it is for right now. Maybe in the future it'll change, but that's the deck of cards that we're playing up against right now. So, in navigating that, we're going to talk about that in this episode a little bit. Also, we're going to continue talking about why student self accountability is important. I know you shared a couple of examples last time, and what it really comes down to is helping kids stop doing the finger pointing and blaming. This is why I didn't know this. This is why I didn't learn that. This is why I got this bad grade, and help them look inward. It doesn't mean that there's never this external reason for why they might not have achieved X, but that you take the time to look inward first and say, what could I have done to achieve greater, essentially. And I know a lot of adults. What's got you laughing?
I just want to point out, I'm sorry, I know you guys is totally off topic, but can I just point out the impact that I've had on Tiffany? She said X and used it as a variable. Okay, all right, that's it. I'm done. I'm sorry, Doc. Go ahead.
As a follow-up, I didn't even know that that's what I did, but thank you for pointing that out. I'm a math superstar after all. But like making sure that we understand that the kids learn this behavior of distancing themselves from being the reason or the cause for something, pointing fingers at other people. And we have to, as parents and also as teachers, help them unlearn that behavior. And last episode, if you didn't catch it, please do. We talked about setting a standard at home, that this is the grading standard that I want to see as your parent. I know that at school, the bar is lower, but this is the bar that we have in this house. So we tapped into a little bit on the importance of holding students accountable and making sure that they, understand why it's important and why, and that you as a parent also understand why it's important. The first one we talked about last episode was fostering responsibility, just having them understand that their actions have consequences. And the second one was developing those time management skills. It helps them helping them understand how to manage assignments, deadlines, schedules will help them be more accountable. So then when the project doesn't get turned in on time, or you turned it in with such low quality work because you were actually doing it on the bus on the way to school, now you can look inward. It's not Miss So-and-so's fault or Mr. So-and-so's fault that they were just grading you too harshly, or you didn't know that you had to put this in the project. Now you can look inward and say, you know what, I probably should have started that a little bit earlier to have a better result. And these are all some importances that we found in an article titled The Importance of Holding Students Accountable. And it's on the Pathway Labs blog that we came across that really kind of supported all the points that we were already talking about in our planning episode. So what's another importance that the article listed that we were like, yeah, we know that too.
Like, this is major. Encourage active engagement. Like, let the kids know that when you're in school, when that teacher is talking, when you are put in a group or you're doing an individual assignment, like, that's what you're doing. You're active, you're engaged in that, you're actually doing it, not just sitting around and like waiting for somebody to give you an answer. I know I would say that a lot in class. If I'm up at the board showing you how to do something and I'm asking you thoughtful questions, if you're not trying to answer those questions, you're not engaged. If you're just waiting for somebody else to say the answer, you're not engaged. So you're not giving your brain a chance to understand the material and get to learn it. When students know that they will be held accountable for participation, like, it encourages them to go ahead and do that. And I have had some parents that I would call and let them know that that was going on, and that kid came back a new kid the next day. So, super important for that.
Yeah, definitely. I like that you let the parents know, and then they obviously talked about it at home with the student as well, and then they came back and you saw a difference. That communication. I know we've talked about that many, many times, but it's so important. One of the other importances was building resistance. Having to persevere through obstacles is important beyond the classroom. It fosters that growth mindset that I know a lot of people have heard that term before, that you're not just settling for what is, like you are looking to grow and expand and challenge yourself to achieve um, even more. And so accountability nurtures resilience in students. And so when they face a challenge, when they face a hard math question on the board, or like you shared in the last episode about the student who had to go to the board to complete the math equation. Also, the student who told you, you're not teaching me the way I can learn, like using big words and stuff. So when they face those types of challenges, then they're more likely to persevere because they have that sense of accountability in them. They're understanding that success is a result of their efforts. It's not just something that's handed to you. Like you have to work for it. You have to build up that resilience to take 2 steps forward and maybe have a half step back. And then you take 2 bigger steps forward. So just preparing them to tackle the obstacles, that goes beyond the classroom. That helps them develop that growth mindset, and that makes them lifelong learners as well.
Yeah, and that rolls right into the next one, which is preparing for real world challenges. So if we think about it, if we always try to take care of our kids' challenges now as their children, that's training them that somebody else, not me, but somebody's going to take care of this for me, to the point where they start, we talked about being entitled in a previous episode, they begin to feel entitled. The language that students use that I've noticed with me is, Ms. Wilson, you need to do this, do that. Ms. Wilson, you need to give us like another assignment so we can get our grades up. Just in that statement right there, that lets you know the kid thinks, number one, their grade is my responsibility. And number two, that the work that they do should be minimal, but yield them like great results. A's, 90s, 100s really is what they're actually asking for. What can you give me so that I can get a quick little easy 100 so that I can boost my grade? Well, the world is not going to give that to them. The world and the jobs that they're going to be employed in and the types of tasks that they're going to have to do require them to problem solve, because that's their job. Like, it's nobody that's in your job description to take care of that part. We have to teach them how to take ownership of their goals. If you want to achieve this, then these are the steps, and you have to be willing to do the steps if you really want that goal. And how to navigate challenges.
Right. And I really love how when we had the episode with the kids on, we talked about setting goals. And I know my son read off his goals, and your kids talked about some of their goals for the school year. And so having this goal, it orients your mind to understand, okay, there are steps that I have to take in order to reach that goal. Otherwise, and I'm just wishing it for it to happen, because life doesn't work that way. One of the other importances for accountability that the article talked about was cultivating ethical behavior. And so I know we can think of some adults who lack this ethical behavior, knowing, how to do things with integrity and honesty, even when nobody is watching. Because as a parent, I can't sit and watch my kid do every project, every assignment. I'm not there in class with him, making sure he's paying attention, making sure he's engaged. I can't do that. So when you teach them that accountability, it is so closely tied with that ethical behavior that it's going to create a culture of trust and respect, not just within schools, but also in the broader society. So what we teach them at home, they show that at school. What they learn at school, they're going to show out in the real world. It's all connected. So if at home and at school we are teaching them accountability, then when they go out into the world, they are going to more likely act with integrity and honesty. Integrity being doing the right thing even when no one else is watching. Why? Because you set your goals, you're prepared for these real life challenges, you built resistance, you know how to be engaged, you know how to manage your time, you know how to foster responsibility, all these things that we've already talked about. Now you're able to take that on your own and do the right thing, even though nobody's standing over your shoulder. Because once, and, my background's in special education, and there was a parent in a meeting, and the special education director was there, and the parent in the meeting said, "My kid needs a one-on-one assistant during the day, throughout his day." I can't remember what category his disability was in, but the mom was adamant that this child needed a one-on-one assistant all day, every day at school. That was the only way that he was going to be able to be successful in the classroom. And I'll never forget what the special education director said. She said, tying your student to a one-on-one aide every day is the most handicapping thing that we can do for your child.
Yep.
The most handicapping thing that we can do. So if we as parents, as in or teachers, have taught our kids, our students, that only make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing if I'm looking right over your shoulder, if I'm always checking in with you, if I'm constantly asking you for updates, that's when you really need to be on your A game. Then what are they going to do when we are busy with our own lives, our own jobs? In the classroom, you're busy with other students. They're just going to revert back to their default. So if we can instill in them all of the importances that we've discussed, it ties so deeply into this ethical behavior that you will see your child, maybe not all the time, but some of the times, shock you, because you're like, wow, you did that. First of all, maybe I didn't even have to tell you to do it. You just took initiative to do it. Maybe you did it with such a high level of execution that I'm shocked and you're very proud of yourself. And then that one moment and you giving them that positive reaction will create a ripple effect for it to continue going forward. It doesn't have to be perfect in every situation. They're kids. Every kid is at some point going to try to take the shortcut out. I still do it as an adult. I've learned that the shortcut usually means I'm going to have to do it the right way again later, so I don't do as many shortcuts, but kids are still learning that, right? So right. I think it's just so important that we understand what's taught at home shows up in school, what's taught at school shows up in the real world as well. What was another importance that this article pointed out?
So another one was enhancing student and teacher collaboration. So students are more likely to seek that guidance and ask for help when they know the teacher's expectations versus, so like for me, for example, when I say I have high expectations, that means that I'm expecting the student to do as much as they can before they seek help from me. So if I give them an equation to solve and I've given them their notes and their examples and we talked about it, when it's time for the practice work, what I don't want to see is as soon as I tell them to get started, 10 hands immediately go up for them to asking me to come over to their desk to show them how to do a problem. That's not what's happening in Ms. Wilson's classroom. And that's part of their frustration. I want to see, did you refer back to the notes that I just gave you? Did you refer back to the examples that you just took? And when you were writing the examples, did you write down beside the example the reasons why we should do these steps? Like, I'm looking to see if they are doing what they need to hold themselves accountable for the information. Did you look at the video that's offered in the program where this practice is? There's a whole video in there that you could watch. And so after a couple of weeks of this, the kids already know if they call me over, accidentally because it's out of habit, they'll be like, oh, never mind. I didn't look at the example or the video yet. I was like, well, great. Well, call me back, after that's done and we'll talk about it. But we're working, teachers and parents, we're working with the student collaboratively so that when they get to those real world problems and issues and obstacles that come up, they have it in them. And they know that they have options. Like, well, let me try this. What resources do I have available to me that I can solve my own problem? So that eventually they start thinking about other people's problems and figuring out how to solve those problems. And now we're talking about making money. And
It all is connected. None of these entities exist on their own. They're all impacted by the preceding one, for sure.
Yes.
One of the last one was measuring progress and growth, and this one really looked at excuse me, holding students accountable and how that enables teachers to track progress and growth accurately. So we talked about, grades earlier and that 50% rule, your schools implementing can't get a grade lower than 60. And so this goes beyond the grades. It is looking at personal development, critical thinking skills, and overall understanding of whatever the subject is. And so then this information is helpful for teachers so you can adapt your teaching methods, you can tailor your instruction to meet individual needs. But if we're just teaching for whatever assessment is coming up, we're just teaching for whatever state test is coming up, that doesn't really give you an opportunity as a teacher to accurately measure progress and growth because you've really just been teaching to a specific assignment or assessment that's coming up, and you're not able to see the whole picture of the child because I'm definitely better than a lot of the grades I got in math as a kid. But if you didn't take the time to look for the critical thinking, oh, okay, Tiffany, you didn't do really good. I was the kid who was staying after school. Like I was asking the math teacher, can I come back after school so you could help me understand what this equation is because I'm just not getting it in class. I was that person. But then she was able to get a better understanding of what my critical thinking skills were to see where she needed to maybe change up how she was teaching something to me. So it does help in that area as well, but you have to hold students accountable in order to enable teachers to be able to even track that progress and growth accurately.
Absolutely. Yeah. So later in the article, they gave us some strategies to implement accountability with our kids. So, we're talking about effectively holding students accountable. Educators and institutions can use some of these strategies to do that. So one of the first ones was having clear expectations. So we want to make sure that when we give them an assignment, like number one, we're clear. And that's asking the students, did you understand? Like, do you understand what I just said about what you're supposed to do in this assignment? I know I've had to differentiate for the students what it means to understand what's being asked versus understanding how to do it. So a lot of times the kids will say, I don't understand, what to do. And what they really mean is, I don't really understand how you want me to do this thing that you just asked me to do. And it's important to make sure that they know that difference. Like if the directions say solve the equation, that's the what. Okay, now the how, you can tell me you don't understand how, but don't tell me you don't understand what. Be clear with them and then make sure you're giving them assignments that are achievable for them. Like make sure your expectations are achievable. I always say, my standards are here. My expectations are here. Well, but that's because I know here is really achievable. It's just beyond their comfort zone. It's just beyond where they're used to. Their mediocrity is like how I like to think about it. But they can do it. That goes for assignments, participation, and behavior, particularly behavior. You have to be firm, parents and teachers, when you're dealing with multiple kids, yours too, but I mean, your single ones too, but definitely multiple. Like if you do this for this kid, you don't do this for this kid, like you better have a really good case by case justifiable reason why that is not supposed to happen the same way.
Yeah, that's really good. And if anybody watching has set clear expectations in their classroom in order to hold students, as a strategy to helping kids be more accountable, let us know in the comments as well. The next one the article talked about was regular assessments, using, regularly scheduled assessments, quizzes, or assignments to gauge students' understanding and the progress instead of teaching this long, multi-day or multi-week concept and then testing at the end. And now you have half the class that maybe didn't achieve what you were hoping. Um, Maybe if you had done some assessments or quizzes in between that time, you would have been able to get a little more insight into how the students are doing in the class with that particular subject. What was another one, Val?
So, of course, setting clear expectations also involves their deadlines and their timelines. So, let's make sure we're enforcing those when we give them so that they understand if this is what is set and this is the expectation, then that's it. Let's stop extending, making all that fluid, right?
Yeah, I like that one as well. This one, I think you've talked about and hinted on a few times, peer accountability. Oh, and I've shared my feelings about group projects as a kid. Not my favorite thing to do at all, but incorporating those group projects or even peer evaluations. So if you have your class coming up, presenting, ask the class to give them feedback, whether it's written down or verbal right in the moment. Get those peer evaluations, and because when students rely on each other's contributions, they're motivated in most times to uphold their end of the work and contribute meaningfully. That's always going to be that one. I told you that one seemed to always end up in my group that wasn't holding their, carrying their own weight, didn't have much to contribute. But that's something that's a one-off that a teacher can have discussions with as well. But that peer accountability is something that can help students be accountable as well. What's
Yeah.
another one about?
Another one is reflective exercises. So it's so important to have students get in the habit of assessing themselves, assessing their performance, and assessing their work, because that's necessary when you have set goals and you're trying to achieve them. How am I progressing towards my goals, right? What do I need to do different or adjust in order to get where I'm trying to go? This is again, it fosters self-awareness and a commitment to personal growth.
Yeah, I like that one. One of my favorite. You probably would agree. Anybody watching, I know you, Val, too, is parental involvement. Engaging parents or guardians in the accountability process. Because what did I say earlier? What's taught at home shows up at school. What's taught at school is going to show up in the world. So when there is collaboration between educators, students, and parents, notice I didn't just say educators and parents. The child, I don't care if they are 5 years old, they are a part of the conversation. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that need to execute what parent and teacher are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to include them. So when that collaboration happens, the support system becomes stronger. And this will help kids know, oh, Miss Wilson is talking to my mama. So let me make sure I show up in class the way that I should. Even that external motivation to be accountable, that counts too. Sometimes it's not always just innate. Sometimes there's this external component to it that helps us be accountable as well.
What's another one? So one that really struck me and I totally believe in, because at this point I almost think that like grades should just be blown up and thrown somewhere. I just think there's a better way to assess what a kid knows. So the article said emphasize learning over grades. And I spend a lot of time like having conversation with my students because remember, I've gotten the conversation, can you give us something quick, easy to get a quick 100 to boost my grade? What I tell my kids is if you focus on the learning, the grades will follow because you'll know what you're doing. But if you're only focused on the grade, then usually kids that are just focused on the grade are looking for shortcuts. They're looking for a way to get around this work that you've given me to do. Well, sweetie, the work is to prepare you for the thing that's going to get you your grades. So just rewiring kids' minds to let them know the real purpose of us being here at school is for you to learn, and not just for you to come out of this class or, pass this grade and get promoted to the next grade. We want you to learn so that when you get older, you have the tools and the resources you need and know how to use them to achieve your goals.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So hopefully everybody watching could glean something from these strategies, or even just also the importances of teaching that accountability. I personally think it all starts at home. There may be others that say the teachers and they are the ones that need to teach this concept. It can be both, but I personally think it starts at home. So parents, step up to the plate. Teachers, step up to the plate. We all do our part because it's all connected. We'll have some very productive citizens in the world that are serving us our coffee at whatever restaurant we're going to for brunch as we age and get older. We'll have great business leaders and great entrepreneurs and all those things. So just think about how interconnected everything is. Be sure to listen to our episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as you already have been. Share them on there. Download them so that you can share with friends, listen again. You can always catch our replays on YouTube as well. And then with that, we will see you all next Tuesday for another Fabulous Tuesday Talks. See you then.
Bye. Bye.